Hello again, everyone. I was asked about making a two-position switch act as the throttle trim for a jet model, and I thought I'd covered this in some previous videos, but maybe just part of another video. I haven't done one specifically about it, so here we are. And the idea is not to use the trim buttons, but simply to have a two-position switch to switch between the engine off and the engine run conditions. And as always, there are many different ways of doing it, so we'll just look at two of them because they have slightly different outcomes. One of them using the digital trims menu and one of them using the throttle cut menu. And even within each method, there are little different variations you can put in if you want to suit your own needs. So let's dive in. We'll go first to fine-tuning the digital trims, and we'll disable the existing trim buttons from doing anything. There we go. It's as simple as that. So now moving the regular trim buttons won't have any effect on the throttle. We come down to this, which is one of your custom ones. Click that, move the switch that I want to use. Now, it's important to get this the right way around. On my radio, this is switch C, but doesn't matter what your radio does. I would want switch back to be off and switch forward to be engine run. But at the moment, switch back, which I want to be off, is showing as plus 100. And switch forward, which I want to be run, is showing as minus 100. And that's going to work the trims the wrong way around. So I'm going to press the rev button, reverse it, so that switch in the engine run condition is plus 100 and switch in the engine off condition is minus 100. So say OK to that. Then come along here and tell it it's the throttle. Now keep going, move along to the right. Move here, you want the mode to be throttle low. Otherwise it'll affect the full throttle servo position as well. Keep moving along. The step will be 100%. So it just moves it all the way. The rate backwards, you want to set that to 0. The reason being we don't want the throttle travel to go below minus 100%. We want it to stop there, so we don't want minus 110 or whatever. And the positive rate, well, if you leave it as 100%, because this is a trim, it would move the travel value halfway between minus 100 and 0, so your idle would be at minus 50%, which starts to give you a bit of a non-linear throttle travel. And so I prefer a lower value than this. But how low a value can you go? Well, the different brands of ECU want a different size of step between throttle off or engine off and engine on condition. And to find that, you just need to experiment, really. Watch the data terminal at very low values of rate to see at what point it won't pick up anymore. What you don't want to be using is a step that's right on the borderline between the ECU recognizing it as stepping between engine off and on or not, because you don't want the tiny bit of frame jitter in flight to suddenly go to a value that the ECU thinks, oh, he switched the engine off and shut you down. So anyway, I'll pick a rate here of 50%, which means it would move the throttle 25% of the way between off and middle. And we'll see the effect of that. So click on that, say OK, and let's have a look at the effect. And go into the servo monitor. So here's my throttle, and the ECU switch is in the off condition. So the throttle goes back to minus 100, and if I operate the throttle, it works. If I now move it to the engine run position, it moves that half of 50, which is 25%. So it moves forward 25% between all the way off and the middle, i.e. minus 75%. So there we go. Throttle works. And when I want to shut down, move the switch back. There we are. But remember, throttle will still be working. Right, so that's one method. Let's go back into digital trim, knock that out for the moment, clear that, and just to be fully sure of it, we'll do that. But we'll leave the trim buttons unassigned so that they have no effect. And so we can move now to using the throttle lock, throttle cut switch. And so I'll clear it. So throttle cut, move the switch to the position where I want it to effectively move the trim all the way back to cut the throttle. Say OK. And the throttle cut output value will be minus 100%. So when we operate the switch, it will force the servo output back to minus 100% and hold it there. So how do we get the thing to work normally then? We go back to fine tuning, into the function curve, throttle, change it to a 3-point, come down here and move that up to some value which you found your ECU unambiguously recognizes the difference between throttle off and throttle on. So say OK to that. Let's have a look in servo monitor. I put it to the engine run condition. Throttle back, I've got minus 61, plus 100. And if I move the throttle cut switch, it goes to minus 100 and it's locked there as I move the throttle. So the two versions can do the same thing of shifting the idle position, which the ECU interprets as engine run or engine off. The difference being the throttle cut version will lock it back there and the throttle has no effect. The digital trim version will still allow the throttle stick to move the output. And sometimes you want that. For instance, some ECUs, when you've done a shutdown, will allow you to move the throttle stick fully open, leave it there, and after a few seconds the ECU would interpret that as a command to run the cooling of the engine, or if you're not careful, run the pump to prime the fuel lines. So be careful what you do there.